The sun was sinking behind the dusty Afghan mountains, painting the sky with shades of fire and ash. In the valley below, a team of Navy SEALs crouched in silence, their hearts pounding. They were trapped, surrounded by Taliban fighters on all sides. No help was coming. And their mission, rescuing a captured journalist, had gone terribly wrong. Bullets cracked in the air, bouncing off rocks and kicking up dirt. The SEALs had taken cover behind a broken mud wall. Their radios were silent, jammed, or blocked. No one knew for sure. Then suddenly something strange happened. Gunfire burst from the ridge above them, loud, heavy, and terrifying. It wasn't the enemy. This was different, sharper, like thunder rolling from the sky. But none of the SEALs had fired, and the enemy hadn't flanked them yet. "Who's shooting?" whispered a young SEAL named Grant, looking up in shock. "Where's the pilot?" another muttered, crawling to peek over the edge. No one had seen a plane, and no air support had been called in. They were supposed to be on their own. So who was firing? Suddenly a voice came over the comms, clear, calm, and completely unexpected. "Target ridge cleared. Move west." "I've got you covered," the voice said. It was a woman's voice, strong but composed. The SEALs froze, exchanging wide-eyed glances. A woman. "Up here in this zone?" Tan Connor, the team leader, grabbed his radio. "Identify yourself," he said firmly. "Captain Rachel Vega, A-10 Thunderbolt, callsign Reaper 3, she replied without hesitation. "But you weren't scheduled," Connor said, confused. "I know," Rachel replied. "I wasn't invited, but I came anyway." High above, circling through thin air and rising heat waves, Rachel's A-10 Warthog flew low. It was a powerful beast, ugly, armored, and deadly. The Gyweight Avenger cannon beneath her aircraft had just saved the SEALs' lives. And she wasn't done yet. Rachel scanned the terrain. Her eyes narrowed beneath her helmet. She could see movement. 2 more enemy units heading toward the SEALs from the east. Without waiting, she banked hard. Her jet screaming as it tilted. She dived low, lower than regulations allowed. Her finger pressed the trigger, and fire rained from the sky. The enemy scattered. Some didn't move again. Below, the SEALs started moving again, trusting the strange guardian in the sky. They advanced west as instructed, sticking close to walls and cover. Rachel's voice guided them, always calm. Always watching, she was their eyes, their shield, and for now, their only hope. Back in the cockpit, Rachel gritted her teeth. She wasn't supposed to be flying today. Her jet had been pulled from rotation for maintenance. But when she overheard chatter about a missing SEAL team, something in her heart pulled hard. She couldn't explain it. She just knew she had to be in the sky, so she made it happen, quietly, quickly. And without waiting for permission, her mechanic, an old friend named JD, had helped her fix the minor glitch. "You sure about this?" he had asked, tightening the last bolt. Rachel had nodded, slipping on her helmet. "I promised my brother I'd always look after his team," she said. JD didn't argue. He just watched her take off into the fading light. Now, as she flew alone over enemy territory, that promise burned in her chest. Her brother, Adam, had been a SEAL too, until he didn't make it home. Rachel had trained for years, faced doubt, judgment, and loss. But nothing shook her, not when she flew. In the air, she was free, fearless, and unstoppable. Back on the ground, Connor reached a small rise and saw the extraction point in the distance. But enemy movement was closing in from all directions. "Reaper 3, we need another sweep," he called. "Already on it," Rachel said, her voice steady. She came in again. Wings almost touching the tops of trees, her cannon roared, lighting up the enemy like fireworks in the night. The SEALs pushed forward, moving fast now, knowing they had a ghost above them, a pilot they couldn't see. But one who saw everything. "Who is she?" Grant asked again, breathing hard. Connor didn't answer right away. He looked at the sky where her jet had just passed and whispered, "She's the reason we're not dead." As the night deepened and the battle raged on, one thing became clear. Rachel Vega wasn't just a pilot. She was a storm, a shield, and a silent promise flying above the battlefield. And though she hadn't been called, she had come anyway. Because heroes don't wait for orders. They show up when no one else can. 12 hours earlier, the airfield was quiet. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a soft golden light over the gray runway. Pilots gathered in the operations room, scanning mission boards, sipping bitter coffee, and waiting for orders. But Captain Rachel Vega stood alone near Hangar 9, staring at her grounded A-10 Warthog like it was a caged animal. She crossed her arms, frustration burning in her chest. Her jet, tail number R302, was marked as non-operational. Just one minor electrical fault, something that could be fixed in minutes. But red tape and rules meant it was grounded until further notice. Rachel knew something felt wrong that morning. A feeling deep in her bones, sharp and cold like metal against skin. She had overheard 2 junior officers whispering near the comms room. "SEAL team gone silent," one had said. "No signal." No support. Rachel's stomach tightened. No details were shared, but she knew something bad was happening out there. Her mind flashed to her brother's face, Adam Vega, Navy SEAL, KA 2 years ago. She still remembered the call, the folded flag, the silence after. She had promised herself that day, if ever a team was left behind like his, she wouldn't wait. She would fly, even if it meant risking everything. She walked straight to the maintenance tent and found JD, the old mechanic with oil-stained hands and a soft heart. "JD, I need R302 in the air in 1 hour," she said firmly. He blinked, surprised. "Command says she's grounded." Rachel leaned in, eyes steady. "I'm not asking for permission." He studied her face for a moment, then sighed. "You remind me of your brother when you get that look," he said, grabbing his toolbox together. They worked in silence, tightening, testing, checking. The problem was minor, a faulty sensor reading. Easily bypassed, the bird wasn't broken, just benched. "You planning to take her up alone?" JD asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Rachel nodded, sliding into her flight suit. "You know this could end your career, right?" He said quietly. She smiled faintly. "If I don't go, someone else's career might end in a body bag. Within an hour." The Warthog's engines roared to life. She taxied to the far end of the runway. Away from the main tower's view, the sky was clear. The air thin, perfect flying weather. She took off low and fast, disappearing into the sunrise like a shadow with wings. She flew without clearance, without escort, and without backup. But she had everything she needed: fuel, firepower, and fury. Her hands gripped the controls like they were part of her. Her eyes scanned the terrain below, reading the land like a map drawn in dust. She knew the likely zone where the SEAL team had gone silent. A narrow valley choked with dry brush, caves, and ambush points. Rachel had flown over it before. It was known as Dead Echo, because sometimes voices went in but never came out. She dropped altitude, weaving through cliffs and shadows. She cut the radio, flying dark, relying only on instinct. Her heartbeat was calm but steady, like a war drum beneath her ribs. She wasn't looking for a fight, but she was ready for one. Then she saw it, smoke, faint but fresh, curling into the sky through her scope. She spotted movement, figures crawling through broken ground. Too organized to be enemy. These were trained. These were brothers. She recognized the SEAL gear, the formations, the wounded dragging behind, and then she saw them. The enemy snipers above the ridge, ready to fire. No one else saw them. No warning had gone out. Rachel didn't hesitate. She flipped the safety off her cannon, locked on and fired. The sky exploded with sound, a roar like metal thunder crashing through stone. The snipers vanished in clouds of dust and flame, and the SEALs looked up, confused, saved by a ghost in the clouds. She switched to comms, her voice even. "Target ridge cleared, move west. I've got you covered." For a moment there was silence on the radio. Then a voice came through, hesitant. "Who is this?" "Captain Rachel Vega, Reaper 3, she replied. "I wasn't invited," she added. "But I came anyway." She circled above them, her Warthog graceful and terrifying. Enemy fighters scrambled below, caught between rocks and fire. Rachel didn't stop to explain. She focused, aimed, and fired again, creating safe paths with every pass. Every second in the air was a second stolen from punishment. Every shot she took was a line crossed with no way back. But Rachel didn't care about consequences. She cared about the boots on the ground, the brothers crawling through hell. Up in the sky she flew alone, but down below, they finally had someone watching over them. Someone who shouldn't have been there, but was. Because real warriors don't wait for orders, they just fly. The sun was almost gone now. Its last golden light faded behind the jagged Afghan cliffs. Darkness crept into the valley like a slow, silent enemy, and the SEALs were running out of time. Their boots pounded the dusty ground as they pushed west. Every breath they took was sharp with dust, sweat, and fear. They were still being hunted. More enemies were coming. But this time they weren't alone overhead. Captain Rachel Vega's A-10 Warthog cut through the sky like a ghost made of fire and steel. Her engines thundered low above the mountains, echoing through the empty canyons. Her presence was felt before she was even seen, like a warning, like a growl before the bite. The SEALs looked up again, and this time they knew. "She's still with us," one of them said under his breath. "Whoever she is, she's not leaving." Rachel circled above the battlefield, her eyes locked on the ridges through her thermal scope. She could see everything, cold outlines of enemy bodies creeping through the rocks. They were trying to flank the team again, coming from both sides like jaws closing in. She knew this move. She'd seen it before. They wanted the SEALs boxed in, then buried. Her voice came over the comms again, low and steady. "Two groups moving in from your 3 and 9. Spread and cover the wounded." Lieutenant Connor didn't question her. He trusted that voice now more than he trusted the command center. He gave a quick signal and the team split. Moving like a shadow in motion, Rachel pulled her jet into a sharp turn. The wings almost kissing the cliffs, she aimed her nose straight at the enemy on the left flank. Her thumb pressed down, and the GAU-8 Avenger cannon screamed again. It didn't sound like a gun, it sounded like the earth ripping open. A burst of 30mm rounds tore through the rocks, exploding dust and blood into the sky. The enemies scattered. Some never moved again. The SEALs moved fast, slipping past the chaos, carrying their wounded brothers between them. They had minutes, maybe seconds, to make it to the extraction zone, and Rachel was buying them every second with smoke and fire. In her cockpit, the controls rattled and warning lights blinked red. Her right wing had taken a hit on the last pass, minor damage, but she felt the drag. She coughed, the air thick with the smell of oil and metal, but her hand stayed steady on the stick. She had flown through worse, this bird was her beast. Her shield, her voice, together, they were unstoppable. She whispered to the Warthog like it could hear her. "Not yet, girl. Hold together just a little longer." Back on the ground, a dust storm began to rise. Wind screamed through the valley, tossing sand into the air like fog made of glass. Visibility dropped fast. The SEALs could barely see a few feet ahead. Reaper 3. "We're blind down here," Connor said over comms. Rachel checked her instruments. The storm was cutting even her thermal visuals. She clenched her jaw, then made a decision that would terrify most pilots. "I'm coming lower," she said. She dropped altitude, slicing through the storm. The dust slapped against her cockpit, painting it beige and blinding. She relied on memory, on instinct, and on sound. The Warthog's engines roared like a monster in the dark. Down below, the SEALs heard her before they saw her. Her shadow rolled across the dust, wings wide like a bird of prey. Then came the scream of the cannon, burst after burst, guiding them forward. She wasn't just attacking, she was lighting their path with fire. "She's carving a way out for us," one SEAL shouted. Crawling forward, they followed the sound. The fire, the ghost in the sand. Rachel's cockpit was shaking now. Sand poured through the vents, her visor fogged up. She was flying blind, but her heart saw what her eyes couldn't. She saw her brother's face. She saw all the soldiers who never got to go home. And she saw these men alive. Because she didn't wait for permission. She made one last dive, firing just ahead of the SEALs' path, clearing their route, stopping the ambush that waited like a trap. Then she climbed fast, her Warthog groaning from the strain. "Extraction point, 150 meters, she called out, her voice starting to crack. Connor turned to see the lights of a helicopter in the distance. They were almost out, almost safe, because one woman refused to stay grounded. The wind screamed, the sand roared, and the night was on fire. But Rachel Vega flew through it all like she belonged there. Not because anyone asked her, but because she knew when others run. She flies, and when screams rise from the dust, she answers with thunder. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the gunfire. Dust floated in the air like ghosts refusing to leave. Down below, the SEALs regrouped behind broken stone walls. Their faces were tired, bruised, and covered in sand. They were alive, but only because of one pilot who refused to stay grounded. High above them, Rachel Vega's A-10 Warthog circled once more. Her voice came through the static-filled radio. Calm but tired, "You're clear for now. Extraction in 5 mics. Connor exhaled, glancing at his men. 5 minutes. "Boys, 5 more and we're out," he said. No one answered, but everyone heard. Every man silently thanked the ghost in the sky. Rachel leaned back in her seat, the sweat cold on her neck. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the storm of memories breaking inside her. The smell of smoke, the heat, the screams, it all reminded her of another day, another loss. Her brother Adam Vega had been her world. He was the reason she had joined the Air Force. He was the voice that told her she could do anything, even in a world that doubted her. She remembered their childhood, playing in the backyard with paper planes. Adam always made his plane dive and roll, pretending to protect her from bad guys. She laughed then, a little girl chasing her brother's shadow in the sky. Years later, he joined the SEALs. Rachel joined the Air Force. Different branches, but one promise. Wherever you go, Adam had said, I'll have someone like you watching over me. She had smiled and replied, then you'd better stay where I can see you. They had laughed, but fate had other plans. Rachel's first mission came months after Adam's last. He was lost in an ambush that mirrored tonight's chaos. Same mountains, same silence, same missing signal. She wasn't there to help him by the time she got clearance. It was already too late. They found his team, but not him. Only his tag burned and bent ever since that day. She had carried the guilt like a scar under her ribs. She swore she'd never wait for orders again. If someone was left behind, she'd go, no matter the risk. And tonight, as she flew above those SEALs, she felt him beside her in every turn, every burst. Every heartbeat, he was there, whispering, fly low. Little sister. Rachel checked her sensors. Enemy signals were rising again. Small trucks were moving fast through the canyon. They were regrouping, bringing reinforcements. She bit her lip, scanning for fuel. Barely 20%, enough for one more strike, maybe two, but not enough to play safe. Down below, Connor's team was still half a mile from the pickup zone. They were moving slow, carrying their wounded and running on fumes. Rachel knew they wouldn't make it without cover. She clicked her mic. Reaper 3 to ground team, stand by. Connor looked up. Reaper, what are you doing? Her reply came soft but sure. Finishing what I started. She banked hard left. Her jet tilting almost sideways, the ground rushed up to meet her. She aimed for the convoy and armed every weapon system. Her heartbeat slowed. Her focus sharpened. The world outside her cockpit disappeared. There was only her brother's memory, and the mission. She dove. The GAU-8 cannon thundered again, shaking the valley. Flashes of light ripped through the night. Her rounds hit precise and deadly, tearing the enemy line apart. The trucks exploded one by one, flames reaching for the stars down below. The SEALs ducked as the air shook to them. It felt like an angel's wrath, loud, furious and divine. Then, another hit. Rachel's cockpit jolted violently, alarm screamed. A missile had clipped her right wing. The entire jet shuddered, metal cracking, warning lights blazing red. Come on, baby. Stay with me, she whispered. Her vision blurred for a second, smoke filling the cabin, but she didn't pull away. Not until the last of the enemy convoy was gone. She leveled out, barely keeping the jet steady. Her hands gripped the controls like they were her lifeline. The smoke burned her throat, her head pounded, but her voice over the radio stayed calm. Enemy neutralized. You're clear to extract. On the ground, Connor stared at the sky. He could see her Warthog limping through the smoke, one wing dragging. Reaper 3, you're hit. He shouted. Copy that, she replied softly. Still flying. Her fuel was low. Her hydraulics were failing, but she wouldn't land. Not yet. She wanted to make sure they got out first. Reaper 3, you need to RTB now. Command suddenly broke in. She ignored them. Her eyes stayed locked on the extraction zone. Only when she saw the helicopter lights flicker on did she finally let go. She turned her jet toward the open horizon. Smoke trailing behind her. Inside the cockpit, she exhaled deeply, whispering to the empty seat beside her. You see that, Adam? We got them out. The wind howled through the cracks in the hull. The stars above seemed to nod in silent agreement, and for the first time in years, Rachel Vega allowed herself to smile, even in fire and chaos. She had found peace, because tonight she had kept her promise. Smoke curled around her helmet like ghostly fingers. Rachel Vega blinked fast, her eyes burning, her throat dry. Inside the cockpit of the wounded A-10 Warthog, red lights flashed like silent screams. The smell of burning wires and scorched metal filled the air. She had just completed the last pass. The enemy convoy was gone. Torn apart by her final cannon burst, the SEAL team was now moving safely toward extraction. Her mission was complete, but her jet, her loyal steel beast, was dying. Rachel tapped the control panel. Trying to reset the stabilizers, her right wing dragged badly, and one engine had begun to cough. The screen in front of her flickered. showing erratic data, altitude dropping slowly. Fuel almost gone, pressure unstable. She coughed again, pulling her oxygen mask tighter. It barely helped. The cabin was too hot, sweat ran down her neck, soaking the inside of her suit. Her hands were steady, but her body was starting to tremble. She had flown damaged jets before, but not like this. This one felt personal. Like her jet was hurting with her. Reaper 3. "Status?" came a voice through the comm. It was the forward base operator. Calm but urgent. Rachel clicked her mic, her voice rough but controlled. "Hit mid-fuselage, losing pressure, one engine fading, visual low. But I'm flying. You need to land immediately," the voice said. Rachel glanced at the screen again. There was a small FOB, forward operating base, less than 40 miles away. She could try for it, if her engine held. But first she needed to be sure the seals were out. She tuned back to the team's frequency. "Reaper 3 to ground, confirmed dust off," she said. There was static at first, then Connor's voice came through. "Confirmed. We're up. We're safe." Rachel closed her eyes for half a second, relief washing over her. Then pain hit her like a punch. Her ribs ached. Her leg was going numb. She looked down and saw blood spreading from her right thigh. A piece of shrapnel must have hit her through the damaged floor panel. She hadn't even felt it until now, but she gritted her teeth and kept flying. "Come on, girl," she whispered to the jet. "Don't give up now," the A-10 groaned beneath her. The sound metallic and tired. The plane had taken a beating, but it was still in the air. So was she. The landscape below blurred as she dropped lower. Rachel switched to emergency navigation, guiding herself by instinct more than instruments. The mountains stretched like claws beneath her. She needed to clear them, just a few more minutes. Suddenly a new warning blared. Hydraulics failing. Her flight stick became heavier in her grip. Controlling the plane felt like steering through thick mud. Her breathing grew harder, her vision spotted. She was losing blood too fast. Reaper 3. "Respond," the FOB operator called again. "I'm coming in, manual landing," Rachel said. "Medical is standing by," they replied. "Can you eject?" "No," she said flatly. "I'm riding this bird home." She couldn't eject, not in this terrain, not in this condition, and not after what this plane had done for her. The Warthog wasn't just a machine, it was her armor, her shield, her voice in battle. She wouldn't leave it behind unless it forced her to. She saw the base now, lights blinking like stars on the ground, but they were coming up fast. She dropped the landing gear manually. Biting her lip from the pain, the gear clicked into place, half stuck but holding. Smoke now poured from her right engine. The left was wheezing but steady. She angled the jet carefully. Lower, lower. On the ground, emergency teams waited. They could see the trail of smoke. They could hear the groaning engines and knew this landing might not be clean. Rachel whispered one last word. "Adam," and then the wheels touched. The first bounce was hard. The second almost knocked her unconscious. But she kept the nose level. Her bleeding leg froze on the pedal, her hands gripping the stick with all she had left. The Warthog screamed across the runway, tires burning, brakes whining, and then silence. The jet rolled to a stop at the edge of the tarmac, trailing smoke and blood. For a long second, nothing moved. Then the cockpit opened slowly. Rachel's helmet rolled out first. Her arm reached over the side, shaking, and then she climbed down one boot at a time. Medics rushed forward, shouting her name. But she stood still, even as her knees wobbled. She looked back at the jet, scorched, broken but whole, just like her. She whispered, "You brought me home." And then, finally, she let herself fall. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground, and as her vision dimmed, she smiled. Not because she was safe, but because the men she flew for were too. The helicopter blades chopped through the dark sky. Hot wind blew inside the open sides, rattling the gear and stinging the eyes of the exhausted SEALs. They sat in silence, blood on their hands, dirt in their lungs, and disbelief in their eyes. But the only sound louder than the rotor was the question no one dared to ask out loud. "Where's the pilot?" Connor sat at the edge, watching the desert fall behind them. He replayed every second in his head. The voice that guided them, the cannon blasts that cleared the path, the fearless dive into enemy fire. Who was she? And more importantly, was she still alive? The chopper touched down at the forward base in a cloud of dust. Medics rushed to help the wounded SEALs, but Connor didn't wait. He jumped out, his boots hitting the ground hard, eyes scanning the night. That's when he saw the fire crew, clustered around a jet at the far edge of the runway. He recognized the shape even through the haze. The A-10 Warthog, its skin blackened, its wing dragging, smoke curling out from the engine. But it had made it back. Connor ran past the tents, past the jeeps, past the noise. His chest tightened when he saw the cockpit open. But no one inside. Then someone pointed. "She's over there," a mechanic said quietly. Connor followed the gesture and saw her, lying on a stretcher under a floodlight. Her flight suit was ripped and bloody, her helmet on the ground beside her. Two medics worked quickly, bandaging her leg, checking vitals, pressing oxygen to her face. She looked small, fragile even. Nothing like the ghostly voice that had roared over the radio just hours ago. But her eyes, half open, still had that fire. The same fire he saw in combat veterans, in people who had stared death in the face and refused to blink. He stepped closer, unsure what to say. Then Rachel's cracked lips moved slightly. "They make it?" "Ah," she whispered. Connor dropped to one knee beside her. "Yeah," he said, voice low. "All of us." Rachel nodded once. Then her head fell back. Sleep took her like a wave, but not before a soft smile appeared on her face. Inside the command tent, chaos was unfolding. The base commander stood behind a table, gripping a printed mission log. "We had no record of this sortie," he said sharply. "No flight clearance. No radio contact until mid-operation." Across from him stood J.D., the mechanic who had helped Rachel launch. He said nothing, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. A staff officer barged in, holding a tablet. "You need to see this." "Sir," he said. He tapped the screen, and grainy drone footage filled the screen. Rachel's Warthog diving through smoke, clearing enemy positions one after another. The SEAL team moving behind her. The perfect coordination. The precision. The courage. Everyone fell silent, even the commander. After a long moment, he exhaled. "She wasn't supposed to be there," he said. "But without her, we'd be planning 6 funerals." News spread fast across the base. Pilots whispered about the woman who flew without orders. Mechanics passed around photos of the busted Warthog with pride. SEALs began calling her Ghost Rider and Angel of Dust. But Rachel didn't hear any of it. She was still asleep. Recovering. Healing. The next morning, Connor visited the medical tent again. Rachel was awake now, sitting up slowly. A soft bandage over her brow and IV in her arm. "You look better in person," he said with a grin. She raised an eyebrow. "I look like a car wreck." "Yeah," he nodded. "But a car wreck that saved 6 lives. He pulled something from his vest pocket. A small, scorched piece of metal, her dog tag. It had fallen off in the crash, and a medic had found it near the tarmac. He handed it to her. Rachel took it slowly, her hand trembling just slightly. "Thanks," she said, voice quiet. "No," Connor replied, "thank you." Outside, the base buzzed with activity. But inside that quiet tent, a bond had formed, stronger than metals, deeper than rules. Rachel didn't ask what would happen next. She already knew the flight report would be messy. There might be hearings, questions, maybe even consequences, but she didn't regret a thing. She had flown because no one else would. She had acted when others froze. And she had done what she came to do, bring them home. As she rested, someone stuck a handwritten note to her bedpost. It read, "Not all heroes wait for orders." Rachel smiled when she saw it. Because in her heart she knew she didn't just fly a jet that night. She flew a promise, she flew a memory, and she flew a legend straight into the history books. Rachel Vega woke up to silence, no alarms, no jet engine, no enemy fire. Just the soft beep of a monitor and the cool hum of an air conditioner. She blinked slowly, trying to remember where she was. Her leg throbbed, wrapped in bandages. Her ribs were sore, her head felt heavy. But she was alive, and so were the SEALs. She turned her head and saw a clipboard hanging at the foot of her hospital bed. On it, someone had scribbled, "No visitors unless they've been in a firefight." Rachel smiled weakly. That sounded like something a SEAL would write. Minutes later, the tent flap opened. Lieutenant Connor walked in, still in dusty gear, arm in a sling. His boots tracked dirt on the clean floor. But no one cared. He gave her a small salute, not military, but personal. "You caused a mess," he said. Voice calm. "Yeah?" Rachel replied, throat dry. "You also saved our lives," he added, pulling up a chair. "So thanks." Outside the tent, the entire forward base was buzzing. Everyone had heard about the pilot who flew in without orders, the one who turned the tide of an ambush and limped home on one engine. Whispers called her Steel Wings. Ghost Angel, and the Reaper Queen. She hadn't asked for a name, but legends never do. At HQ, however, the story was less inspiring. A heated meeting was taking place behind closed doors. Commanders slammed reports on the table. She went rogue, one officer barked. She defied flight restrictions, ignored chain of command. A major folded his arms. But she saved 6 SEALs and got herself back alive. She got lucky, a colonel muttered. But luck couldn't dive into a canyon blind. Luck couldn't clear a path through a dust storm with one failing engine. And luck definitely couldn't make a SEAL team trust her life-saving aim from the clouds. The argument went on for hours, finally. An old general stood up. He had seen combat, not just maps and screens. He looked around the room and said, "I've read her flight logs, I've seen the drone footage. I've talked to the SEALs." Then he said something no one forgot. "You want to court-martial a woman for doing what your entire chain of command failed to do? Save lives?" The room fell silent in that moment. Rachel's fate changed. She wasn't charged. But she wasn't praised either. They called it an unauthorized act under extreme conditions, which meant, you're not in trouble. But don't do it again. Still, the truth couldn't be contained. Word spread, stories were told, and soon even pilots back home knew about the A-10 that flew through hell for her brother's team. Rachel was flown back to base 2 weeks later. Her jet, battered and bent, was waiting in the hangar. The mechanics hadn't scrapped it. They were fixing it in secret, calling it her bird. Even JD, the old mechanic who had helped her launch, kept its ID tag in his pocket. When she stepped off the transport plane, the hangar crew stood at attention. No one clapped, no one cheered, they just nodded, quiet respect. The kind warriors give each other. Rachel was offered a medal, but in private, no press, no photos. No speeches. She held it once, then handed it back. "Give it to the SEAL who carried the wounded the whole way," she said. "I was just doing my job." She returned to duty after recovery. No desk job, no grounding. She didn't want praise, she wanted to fly. And they let her because deep down, even the command knew. Some rules are written in ink, but others are written in blood. Weeks later in a quiet hallway, a young female cadet stopped her. "Ma'am," she said shyly, "is it true you went up without orders?" Rachel paused, smiled softly. "Sometimes," she said. "The right thing isn't on the list." The cadet stood taller after that, and Rachel walked away, the limp in her legs slowly fading. Back in the SEAL compound, Rachel's name stayed on the wall. Not in print, not official, but carved with a knife on the edge of a locker. Rachel Vega, Reaper in the sky. They never forgot her. Not because she was perfect, not because she followed every rule, but because when everyone else waited, she flew, and that made all the difference. Years had passed. The desert wind still whispered through the valleys where Rachel Vega once flew, but now her name was spoken in quiet tones across bases, bunkers and battlefields, not as a rumor, but as a legend. Captain Rachel Vega didn't chase medals. She didn't pose for interviews. She stayed in the skies, flying mission after mission, protecting those who never saw her face. But in every air wing, new recruits heard her story. Not from commanders, but from each other. Did you hear about the pilot who wasn't even cleared to fly? How the one who flew into a dust storm to save a SEAL team? And always the same ending. She brought them home. Even when no one else could, Rachel now trained younger pilots. Not in lecture halls, but in the hangars by the jets, with grease on her fingers and a calm voice that carried weight. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. Her students followed her not out of fear, but because they trusted her. She didn't teach from books, she taught from scars. One afternoon, under the burning sun, she stood beside a new class of cadets, all wide-eyed, eager, and full of questions. She handed each one a folded paper. They opened it and found only 5 words. "Protect them like their family." One cadet raised her hand. "What if we get orders that feel wrong?" Rachel looked at the horizon, her voice soft. "Then trust your gut, but earn that trust first." Later that evening, Rachel walked alone to the old jet bay. Her Warthog, Reaper 3, stood inside. Restored and gleaming, she ran her hand along the cool metal. The scar on the right wing had been painted over, but not erased. She had asked them to leave it, a reminder in the cockpit. Under the seat she kept something small, a photograph old and slightly torn. It showed 2 kids in a backyard, a boy with toy binoculars, and a girl with paper wings taped to her arms. Her brother, Adam, and her pretending to fly. Rachel sat in silence. The same silence she heard in the sky before the cannon roared. She remembered his voice. "You'll be a better pilot than me," he had once said. She didn't agree then, but now, she carried that belief with every flight across the base. The same SEAL team she saved had been redeployed, stronger, sharper, but still carrying that night in their memories. They wore patches on their gear, simple silver A-10 silhouettes. No words because none were needed, one of them. Grant, the youngest, had become a trainer himself. He kept a bullet casing from that night in his locker. He never cleaned it. He said the dust reminded him of the angel who rained fire through the storm. In time, Rachel was offered command. A desk, a title, a new role away from the sky. She politely refused. "I belong with the birds," she said. And the brass didn't argue because they knew. You don't ground a storm, you let it fly. On her final flight before retirement, the runway was lined with silent salutes, pilots, crew, and soldiers, each one there not because they were told to be, but because they owed her something. Some owed her their lives, others owed her their courage. All owed her their respect. She didn't wave, she didn't cry. She simply walked to Reaper 3, climbed in, and took off. No ceremony, no music, just her in the sky. She flew one last pass over the valley where it all began. The canyon that once tried to claim 6 soldiers and almost claimed her. Now quiet, now still, but never forgotten. She dipped her wing in a silent salute and whispered into the open sky, "You see that, Adam? We kept our promise when she landed." She didn't take off her helmet right away. She sat quietly, letting the moment settle deep into her bones. Not an ending, just a landing back in the hangar. Someone placed a small plaque near the entrance. It didn't mention ranks or awards, just a name, a date, and one simple line. She flew for those who couldn't, and that's what Rachel Vega became. Not just a pilot, but a promise that never ends.